So that's the thing. You want to make sure that you have a lower club.
And I hope we're using the correct translation of the Bible.
Well, you're going to lead with the wrong joke right now.
Yeah, it's wrong.
We're
talking about golf.
Here, wait. Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is Calvary 316. So glad that you're joining us. If you live in the area, check out the church. Again, we're off of Highway 316, hence the name Calvary 316. Our Sunday service is at 10:30. You can learn all about the church by going to calvary316.com, .tv, .org, .net. We own all of the domains. Also go to Outlaw Church. You can find us there. Go to Church at the Dump. We have a lot of domains that point directly to our church. You can find us. If you are not local but looking for a good Bible teaching church that you can watch online, that's not a substitute for plugging into a local church. It's an important thing. But if you're wanting to supplement that with good Bible teaching, then check us out. Again, Sunday service, 10:30. We live stream on facebook.com/Calvary316 or our YouTube channel, Calvary316.live. I am joined, as always, in studio by the man that needs no introduction, Dick Dastardly, the maestro of this dysfunction, also known as Pope Creighton. How you doing, bud?
I am doing well.
Pope of the world.
Pope of the world.
Also new title, Amateur Golf Pro.
I like it.
That is awesome.
So explain your new fascination.
So
I've known you, by the way, since you were very little, and at no point at all did I ever expect at any moment for you to get as geeked out about the game of golf as you've gotten over the last 2 weeks. You got to explain why or how this has happened.
So basically, I also didn't think that I would be into golf
Creighton
at any
Vaughn,
point
the golfer.
in my life, because golf is the second most boring sport to watch on TV of all time. The first being basketball. That being said, what happened was I have a lot of friends who like golf. That would be you, Kyle, who's in the studio with us, Derek and Nick, who are in the studio with us. And Derek, Nick, and Kyle all wanted to go to the range and invited me to come.
So you went to a driving range and attempted to hit a few golf balls and got the bug.
No.
Well, the way that it actually worked was I went and I sat on the grass for maybe 20 minutes, probably watching them hit golf balls. And Kyle was finally like, come hit a golf ball, right? Like, just, that's what we're doing.
Try to hit a golf ball.
Come do the thing that we came here to do. Stop sitting on the grass like a putz. Pun intended. So I hit a single golf ball out of one of their buckets of balls, and I put down the golf club and walked over and bought a bucket of balls.
That's exactly how it went.
Like, it was literally like they teed it up for me. I hit it, and I was like, all right, I'll be back.
This is
because
awesome.
That was way more fun than I was expecting.
It was an instant dopamine hit for you.
It was an instant dopamine hit, and like, the ball went where I was expecting. It was fantastic. And now I spend my breaks at work putting in my basement. So
and it's worse than that. It's worse than that. So there was a garage sale in my neighborhood. So my neighborhood, there's a golf course. So there's a lot of golfers in my neighborhood. And so this past weekend, we were flying out to Kansas City at 10 o'clock. You guys show up at my house at 9:15. Why? Because you and Nick were perusing the neighborhood trying to buy used golf clubs.
Not trying.
We did.
Succeeding.
You were successful in
I
buying
now
used.
own like 10 golf clubs, a good amount of tees, a good amount of balls, and a golf bag. Yeah, this is all.
And so we were talking though about like what you really need as far as like getting started, because you're going to go play Saturday, right?
I am not.
Oh, so you're not going Saturday.
The guys are. I have a prior commitment that is stopping me from going, which is a shame. But they are going to play, and I will be going the next time they go to play.
So you're not quite at that point that golf has taken over your life, but you're really close.
Really close.
Really close. Well, good for you. That's exciting. We're also joined in studio by a merry band of misfits. We'll work right to left. Mr. Nicholas Monty, how are you?
Good. Other than allergies.
You're dealing with some allergies because you mowed your yard, right?
I did. Yep. Yeah. So
mowing your yard on Wednesday might not be the best idea for the allergies.
Yeah, I'll have to rethink that.
Rethink that hardcore.
Yeah.
And then, man, rocking the 316 Polo, Deal Daddy Derek.
I have to.
Speaking of golf,
official.
Looking good. Yeah, we have golf shirt. I didn't even think of that.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I have that one.
There you go. You have a golf shirt.
There you go.
There you go. We're good to go. So
Good.
glad you're with us. Derek also joining this dysfunction is a Spice Daddy
Howdy.
and Kyle Parkin. Glad to see you with us.
Howdy.
You're kind of hit or miss. You jump in, you jump out.
I like to keep everybody guessing.
Keep everybody guessing. Well, we appreciate that for sure.
Supply and demand issue.
And you've also gotten a little bit of the golf bug.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it for a while. I've been going with our buddy Neil, who's going with us Saturday, on and off for a few years. But yeah, going out with the rest of the crew this weekend.
Listen, I'm very excited about this development because for years I've been playing golf by myself, and so I'm excited to. I've been going and playing golf by myself with people that are better than me. I'm excited to have you guys because maybe I'll be better than
We'll just
someone.
never
You
go
used
play
to be
with
better
you.
than us. We might be.
I
catching up.
know.
You might be catching up. Although to be fair, I've been playing quite a bit of golf recently as part of therapy. And speaking of therapy, just to kind of update the audience, I don't know if you guys saw the message. I think I sent it to you guys. But so yesterday was kind of a, when people that have been going through cancer treatment, are finally able to leave the clinic and they're cancer free. And you've seen the videos where they'll go and they get to ring the bell and it's like a big milestone. People are clapping and it's like a significant moment. Like, hey, I've overcome something. I'm cancer free. I've gone through this big trial. Well, when I left the hospital, I didn't exactly get that particular treatment because, man, my journey was still I wasn't free of much. I had a lot ahead of me.
You were not able to reach up and ring the bell.
And I couldn't ring a bell. Thanks for pointing that out, Craig.
Yeah, bud. Here for
Appreciate that.
you. Love you.
They would have had me ring a bell if I could use my arms. But I was rolled out of the room and there was a whole bunch of nursing staff that, were cheering me on. And it was such a touching thing. And it's a milestone marker. But man, I left the hospital and my battle really began. It didn't begin. It was like a whole new battle. The getting out of the hospital was one thing, but now I had to get better. I had to heal. And needless to say, and it's kind of crazy to think, 13 months of rehab, physical therapy. I did 31 appointments in home to get me ready to leave. And then all in total, outpatient included, I've had, again, 13 months. Nick's, you're hearing the allergies.
Bless you.
This is what's going on. So 13 months of rehab, 116 appointments.
Jeez.
And yesterday was my last appointment. I was discharged, and it was emotional. Like I left, I got done. Doug, who's my therapist, and I've been there to hear him sing this stupid song multiple times. He's got this song that he'll sing, goodbye, farewell, you're my friend. He's just the dumbest thing ever. And I've made fun of him on multiple occasions. But we were almost done with therapy. He goes, I've got to sing this song. I said, yeah, I know. I said, I've been preparing myself for this. And we were both teary-eyed. And I got done, got up, gave multiple hugs to multiple people, and then kind of loitered at the front of the rehab facility talking to folks before I left. I got to my truck, man. I cried. Like I was pretty emotional because it was kind of the ring. I didn't ring a bell, although I could have, Creighton. But it was one of those things where it's like, and I sent a text to my family. I think I posted this on social media that, God, it's not just that God is faithful. It's that he's also good. God is good. He's as good in the storm as he is in the sunshine. And, I've been through a storm, a long storm, a prolonged storm, and God has been good. He's not just been faithful, not just faithful. God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. He's been good. And, for me, for anybody that's going through things, God is good as he is in the good times, but he's as good even in the bad times. If we can adjust our perspective and keep it on him and realize he's in control, and we're going through these things because he's ordained them, and we have to kind of embrace that. So if I could also, this past weekend was kind of a milestone. I was invited to go speak at a men's conference in Kansas City. It was kind of a Calvary Chapel Heartland men's conference. And I've been invited over the last few months. I've had a few opportunities to go outside of Calvary 316 to speak, to teach God's word. And I've turned those opportunities down, mainly because I felt a loyalty, an obligation to Calvary 316. I did take 5 months off. I felt like I kind of owed the church my Sunday mornings. But also I just wasn't ready, and physically, just to be able to go. And even this past weekend, going to Kansas City was one of those things where I was nervous about it. Just the stamina of teaching Friday night, teaching 3 times on Saturday, getting home, teaching at Calvary 316 on Sunday, 5 times in a weekend, just the physical endurance that takes, and the traveling and whatnot. Nick and Creighton went with me, which was such an encouragement. But man, God was good. Like, I think what I had to say was very well received. Saturday morning, I actually shared my testimony, kind of made that a Bible study. Nick, how did you think, just the testimony? Because that was the first time I had done kind of that version of it, right?
Yeah, I've never heard it as, a Bible study, in person before. But I mean,
like the closest was maybe that first episode back with the Outlaw Radio.
Yeah, because you've never done anything like that at a personal church, because I think we've been so involved in the situation. You didn't really have
I didn't need to do that.
You didn't have to do that.
You guys lived it with me, right?
Yeah. But it went over very well. I mean, I know a bunch of people approached you and loved it, loved hearing it, blessed their life hearing it. Also, just hearing it that way, to me, I don't know, it was new, refreshing.
A lot of people don't know this, but like, you were, if I had died, you would have been one of the last people I had seen.
Yeah.
Because one of my last memories was being carted out of my house and down the walkway to the driveway, and you and Carrie coming up through the grass, through the pine straw. And, that was one of my so you were part of it from the beginning, and Creighton, you were there. I mean, how did it float? How did you feel about it all?
I thought it went really well. It was, to reiterate what Nick was saying, it was one of the first times that I heard you tell the entire story from front to back.
Yeah.
And it was very powerful for me. It brought up a lot of the memories that I had from that time. And then I remember talking to Nick afterward. I was like, "Are you aware that was like a year ago?" Because gosh dang,
right,
man. And it always amazes me when looking at a storm that I was a part of from the outside, how much I forget about the bad. Like I remember all of the feelings when I thought you were dead. I remember all of the stuff we had to do and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think that the storm from this side looks brighter than it did from that side, which might be
elaborate on that for a moment. Take a moment and try to unpack that. I'm interested.
I just mean, like, when I look back at like January, February, March of 2022, I know intellectually that I was in dire straits, that my world was kind of ending because I thought you were dead. And like, not in an ultimate spiritual way was my world ending, but you
just thought I was. I mean, and listen, to be fair, a lot of people thought I was going to pass away.
Yes.
Because I followed the trajectory of most people with COVID pneumonia. That's why, I mean, even in this conference, I had people coming up and saying, like, "I'm just shocked you're here."
Yes. And at this point, I've kind of bound my life to yours in that I've been in this Calvary 316 thing with you for 10 years now. And like, there was a whole lot of, what do I do if Zach dies? Because I don't know. Like, I've just been kind of like, my life has been the church. And if you die, given that you are the rudder for the church, like, I don't know I know all of that intellectually, but when I actually think back on January, February, March, like, a lot of that, I actually think of like, hey, I had a really good time with Kyle, like shortly after you went down, trying to figure out the finances for the church. Like, it was hard. It was not a good time, but like Kyle, like, that was a good relationship building between me and Kyle. And like, when I actually look back at that, I don't think about everything is crumbling. I think back at I had a really good time with Kyle, even though we didn't do a great job and had to pass it off to his sister because she's a finance person.
You did a wonderful job. Like, don't sell yourself short.
Right. Even like, but a lot of it is like helping Kyle get ready to teach, helping, figuring out who's doing worship. Like all of that was really hard. And it was really, and just the quiet times were difficult when I was thinking about the fact that you were going to die and that I didn't know what I was going to do. It was all rough, man. But at the same time, when I actually look back on it, I don't think of the night that I was trying to sleep and Leslie came down and said, "Hey, the doctor just said this." I think of the good times we had when we were commiserating. I think of I have a very like rose, I think the best term would be a rose colored look at that area of time. And while I appreciate that because it makes it easier now, it was also good to hear you talk about it, especially in the fact that you are relating stuff that you weren't actually there for. Because I'm seeing it from Jessica's point of view. I'm seeing it from your dad's point of view. I'm seeing it from your mom's point of view. And it kind of paints a much broader, more vivid picture from where I could just see black in the time. And now I can almost just see the rosiness. Hearing you talk about it gives it a lot more color in breadth.
I think
what I mean? Does that all make
for
sense?
sure. No,
Yeah.
I think you nailed.
Okay.
I think you nailed it. Real quick, I just want Kyle. You haven't actually. I don't think officially at any point. So you're one of the elders of the church, and again, you and Creighton, like day 2 or 3 of this, y'all came over, opened up the office, got my computer,
Stole all your stuff.
We got to figure out what in the world's going on. We got to step up here, and then it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks after that. I know Andy taught via video, maybe 2 weeks. And then Mike Bauer taught a Sunday, maybe Chad taught a Sunday. But then you were the one, I think, initiated a conversation of like, hey, we don't know how long this is going and our church needs to be normal. And so we need to do what we do, and that's teach through books of the Bible. We're obviously not teaching through Matthew at the moment. And so you were the one that kind of like, hey, I'll start a series. Like, can you tell your end of the story? I know this is not planned. This was not, we'll get to the topic, but this has kind of been initiated. And I haven't heard your perspective, your recounting of how all this worked for yourself and what you went through with it.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of set up the first couple weeks. It was definitely we shut down a little bit just to figure things out. Andy taught via video for 2 weeks, and then Chad taught 1 week. And even with those first couple weeks, I immediately was like, okay, well, I'll fill in for a little bit. We don't know what this is going to be. I'm going to pick a book. And so I took a week and decided to teach through Ephesians. And I told everybody at that point that, I'm thinking it's 5 chapters. I got 5 weeks. So I'll cover 5 weeks, and then that'll give us some time to kind of figure things out and go from there. That turned into, I don't know, 10, 12 weeks or something like that, just because of the way that things played out. And
as any expositional Bible teacher, you plan for 5 weeks and it goes longer than that.
Yeah. And it actually, I mean, that's something that I've thought about, but not really dug into mentally on that is, that was God in a way, because by the time I was wrapping up Ephesians was immediately when, you were ready to get back into it. Almost, maybe off by a couple weeks of just getting your stamina back and whatnot.
In fact, if I can interject, like we had Easter, which I had been very determined that I wanted to do Easter, and then, but I wasn't ready to be back.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do Easter, so we did the chair,
Yep.
Nick helped me up on stage, helped me get to the chair. You went the day before, took the chair up there. We went up there together and,
I forgot about that.
Had to practice it and everything.
Well, yeah. And that's when I'll never forget. It was the first time I had gotten in my truck, and I don't know how many times I've ever ridden in the passenger seat. And we go to get in my truck, and I totally ate it.
Oh yeah, you did.
I went head first, boom, right into the. And Nick's like, "Oh no!" He grabbed me and helped me in. I was like, "I think I can get out of the truck a lot easier than it was getting into it." But I mean, like that Easter Sunday, I was very determined, and the elders were like, if Jessica signs off, it's okay. And Jess was like, you're not standing, because I wanted to stand. She was like, you're not going to do that, but you can sit. And but I wasn't ready to be back. But what was cool is so then we had David Guzik was coming in the week after that.
The next week, yeah.
The next week, which was such a blessing, and we were so honored that he reached out to us. And not me. He reached out to you guys.
He reached out to Andy. Yeah.
Like, hey, I hear what's going on. If there's anything I can do. And so he came in that week. And then it was like, I remember talking to you. It was like, well, Kyle, what do you need to finish Ephesians? And you're like, I think I can do this in 2 more Sundays.
Yep, 2 more.
And so that gave me 3 more weeks with the 2 that you did with Ephesians before I was physically ready. So it was like middle of May.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy to think. This time last year, I was still not teaching full time yet.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But the timing was great. Yeah, you're right.
And the whole experience, I think I've said it before on here. The experience for me was really weird because, not to say that I didn't, think about what was going on and like, be affected by the emotions of, somebody that has been a leader in my life for a long time going down like Zach did. But it's actually kind of good for me to just jump straight into, okay, well, I've got to do this. Like every single week I'm working a full-time job, but I've also got to figure out, preparing Bible study and teaching every Sunday. And for me, it was almost like, I had a very defined job during the time and a very defined role. And so it was almost that in and of itself almost was like made it not so hard on me, if that makes sense. During that
you had
time.
purpose in it.
Yeah, no, and it was very clear I was supposed to be there. I mean, my gosh, like that was the most I've ever like learned in such a compact time, about God and during that time, because you have to learn it. You can't teach it if you don't learn it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was that, and I was working. I was doing work. I was staying busy with it, and it was odd. It was odd for it to be something so drastic, and impactful on my life, but then not like freaking out about it at all because I was busy.
I think what's also cool, and I've talked to a few folks about that time. A few folks not in this room, and almost overwhelmingly, the reaction was, when Kyle first started Ephesians, you could tell like deer in headlights, like I'm doing my best, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And then like there was this progression though, like every week. And again, I wasn't there for it. So I'm only regurgitating and reiterating what others have said that were there. But it was like every single week you got better and better and more comfortable and more in a rhythm. And, and the last, half of the book, I mean, you had hit a stride and you were doing great.
Absolutely.
And for me, it's like, again, I've known you for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And when you were a pimple-faced, 10th grader,
pimples.
and you were a
He did have
pimple-faced
a
10th
good
grader.
Jufro. though.
He did have a Jufro in my living room in man group years and years and years and years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking about hopes and dreams and goals and aspirations, and this was before you entered your wayward season.
Yep.
That prodigal season. You always said, I feel like maybe there's a calling on my life to be a youth pastor, to be a ministry. And then your track kind of went off the rails for a few years. And then, there's a whole story there that can be told later, but you came back and got plugged into Calvary 316. God did an amazing thing in your life, and with Millie came into your life, and just been a beautiful thing. And then over time, you became an elder of our church. You went from an usher, to being an elder, and then became our youth pastor.
Mm-hmm.
You're still being an elder, but also teaching every week prepares you again with youth that hey, there was a need, and you were able to jump into the fray. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I've publicly said, I know I've said this at church, but just so proud of you. Like, if something had happened to me,
I'd have held it down for a little bit longer.
You would have been fine. You would have, whatever job you're doing, you would have let go of, and you would have pastored that church. Mm-hmm. As you're pastoring the church now, it just would have been, you would have been given more time, mm-hmm. In a full time. You've kind of got a little bit of a glimpse, like, man, you can't do this.
No, I will say that one thing nobody really appreciates, Like there's so much more than just getting up there and teaching on Sundays. Like there's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of, time spent, like, deep struggling and chewing on things in the word. But then that's only, I don't know, if I had to guess on a number, 20 hours of the week is the Bible study prep. There's so much more that goes on with leading a church. I mean, you've got people that are relying on you to, like, be aware of what's going on in their life and being attentive to what's going on, and, building friendships like what we've got here, and having these relationships. There's so much more that goes into it. And I don't see how any pastor could really be putting the proper amount of effort into their flock having to work a full-time job at the same time. Like that, if you're going to be actually caring for your flock, it's got to be your full attention.
My dad tells this story way back in the day at Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain, where he was bivocational. He was working a warehouse job at DuPont, and was trying to pastor the church, and was just at a juncture. He wasn't making enough money at DuPont. My mom was an RN. She was working crazy hours too, and they had a couple kids, and he was at this point where he was like, I've got to get a second job, just to help supplement, my income, whether it's a pizza route or whatnot. And the elders heard about it, and they were like, you know what? No, like, we're going to do whatever is necessary for you to be able to pastor our church full time. And, my dad, recalls just how liberating and freeing that was. And you start off, you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with my whole week. And it's like, very quickly, you're like, well, man, I don't have enough hours to fulfill this. Yep. And, Jesus says, the poor you'll have with you always, me for a limited, like, ministry's bottomless. It will take as much as you give it, as many hours. I will say, just kind of pivoting with that. Again, if you attend a church, please understand your pastor. Like, it's a good thing that you're supporting your pastor financially to enable them to do what God's called them to do for your church. There's an adage, and I don't mean to use this in a cavalier way, but you get what you pay for. And if you want a pastor that's engaged, that's invested, that's diligent with the word, that's taking care of what needs to be taken care of, it is a full-time job. I don't care if the church is 30 people or 3,000 people. Like, there's so much ministry that is necessary. It doesn't mean that you can't be bivocational, but man, if there's any way for a church, for you to try to enable your pastor to be full-time, that is such a huge blessing to him, and will reap benefits, I think, within the church itself. So I know that wasn't necessarily part of the topic, and it wasn't Zach's rant. So let's just be real. So we're going to segue very quickly to Zach's rant.
Oh my gosh.
Oh Lord.
Because I do have a little bit of a rant that I'd like to go on before we get to the topic. We have time.
For the record, little
sure?
rant is an oxymoron.
Creighton,
Those two things don't match together.
Creighton,
That being said, I'm taking up more time, so go for it.
This is actually something, and I don't mean this as a joke, but as an encouragement.
Oh boy.
This is something I ran across this week that blew my mind. So I think one of the great tragedies of our culture, I think it's something that Satan has slipped in there. It's been an attack of the enemy. And the church kind of completely seeded this. And I'm not sure how or why or where it happened. I haven't had enough time to really think back through this. But let's be real. Like, today, okay, the church might say that you need to abstain from sex before marriage. But do we really preach that or hold to that? Because by and large, the vast majority of people, even within the church, singles, are having sex before marriage. I mean, is that just maybe a false perception? You guys want to give me a little feedback of just your friends, your own experiences? I mean, not being specific, but.
So, not to be specific, but that's my big problem with the way that Christians treat homosexuality, is that, like, homosexuality and premarital sex are the same thing.
Kind of.
And they're the same thing.
They're both
One of them
yeah.
has an easier solution, but they're both sex outside of marriage with someone who is not your spouse. The fact that the genders are different, I think is not a hill to die on, as opposed to the outside of marriage sex is. I agree with you 100%. And I'll go on my own rant if I'm not careful. Because I don't understand how we turn a blind eye to premarital sex all the time. And yet we have people protesting homosexuality. Both of them are very wrong. And one of them we go out with pitchforks and torches. And the other one,
I agree with
we have pastors who do it. Once again, I don't know anybody specifically. We could have a greater conversation. This could be a topic for another episode. Yeah, but I totally agree with you.
Homosexuality. Okay, so premarital homosexuality sex and premarital heterosexual sex are both wrong in the sense that it's sex outside of marriage. Yes. I don't think that they're the same though. I do think in its most elementary statement, like because it's sex outside of marriage, they're the same in that context. But I do think like there's another layer of issue with same-sex attraction that also has to be unpacked versus heterosexual attraction, which again should not happen outside of marriage.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's not a topic we can dive into. I just want to, for clarity purposes, because I know you and I are kind of on the same page with this. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
But again, I think you're right. Like, again, there's a bit of hypocrisy that the church rails about homosexuality or homosexual sex, like without even thinking like, okay, well, what if they're married? Then it's fine, right? Because now it's within marriage without actually tackling the other issue,
right?
Which illustrates my point that there's also a different layer of issue.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
If it's a man and a woman in marriage, we're good. If it's two dudes in marriage, it's still wrong.
Right. And if it's a man and a woman outside of marriage, they can get married and we're golden.
And we're having a totally different conversation. But it is true, though, that it seems like the church is completely like, hey, this has become so normalized in culture that we're not even like talking about this anymore. You guys, your thoughts, just cursory, because I'm going to read something that blew my mind. What are your thoughts about this particular topic?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Like, absolutely.
Now, Kyle, you deal, like, I haven't been in youth ministry in a decade.
Mm.
And I'm old enough to like go through the Promise Keepers movement. Mm. Justin, you're old enough where there was like a real big celibacy movement within Christianity, where we actually were kind of trying to like combat culture, and we got ridiculed and we took the wrong approach. It was kind of an abject disaster,
and which now is people why describe it as purity culture,
which is why no one touches it with 10-foot pole anymore. Yep. Joshua Harris, who's now no longer a Christian.
Is that the I Kiss Dating Goodbye
I Kiss
guy?
Dating Goodbye. That's a whole nother topic, which we actually years ago did I did a whole episode of the Outlaw Radio Show on I Kissed Jesus Goodbye, the Joshua Harris story.
I remember that.
But anyway, you can go into the archive and find that if you like. But the Promise Keepers movement, like we have tried to address this, but we've seemingly abandoned it. Justin, what are some of your thoughts, Spice Daddy?
Well, I just realized I've probably read the article you're about to read, and I think I know what you're about to say. So I don't.
You and I again, more confirmation. I swear we have the same Twitter feed.
I don't know for sure. I don't want to give it away, but it kind of goes back to. I'm assuming it has something to do with non-Christians coming to a conclusion that we've already come to.
Okay, let's move on away from Spice Daddy because we follow the same social media. This is actually a tweet. No, there was a tweet by an Anglican priest that I follow.
Oh, okay.
That I like a lot. I think he's British. I'm not going to name him because I don't want to promote him because I'm not Anglican. But he made a few statements and then referenced the study that got released.
Oh, okay.
And I went to the study and was like, oh my goodness.
Oh, I think I read the study, not the priest.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're getting the cart before the horse. You two fellas, I mean, what are your thoughts about this particular topic?
Ever since I graduated high school, I mean, the water has definitely changed. Like whatever's going in the water has absolutely changed since I was in school. Like, yeah, there was always like one or two kids who like said they were gay or whatever, but now it's like a blatant in your face. Everyone's trying to be gay, and if you're not, it's a problem.
Well, and one step back. Let's just talk about like premarital sex. Like again, the homosexuality thing's a debate, but like we're not even debating that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's just always been present.
Your thoughts, Nick?
So my first thought was, so I don't want to go on a different way about it, but
I am.
we might. I think today's church might struggle with reaching teens and reaching them in a way that needs to be reached. Growing up, going into church, when I went to church, teens were us when I was a teenager were being taught, by ourselves Sunday and Wednesday when we went to Wednesday church, and then also had something to do Thursday or something like
Right.
a fellowship, and now when I look back on it, like when I got in my college years and stuff and looking back on it, it got away from all that and like, hey, come to our night of worship on Thursday. And that's all they did.
Interesting, right?
So I don't know if this is true, but this is the way I'm feeling is like maybe the churches nowadays they don't have the focus like they used to on the teens in church. Not even just talking to them about premarital sex, but just in their relationship with Christ. Like I don't see that same thing back when I was in church as in nowadays.
Yeah, they don't make it as serious. The only message they ever did was like to where they pass around the rose and then it's beat up by the time it gets to the very last person. That's the only thing that you ever heard was the same thing. Like I've been to multiple churches and heard the same thing. It's like, okay, they don't go in any depth and in the reality of the situation of what it actually does mean if you are being premaritally doing the
or promiscuous. Like Nick,
Yeah.
you kind of, and again, I think I'm picking up on what you're putting down in the sense that, like telling teenagers don't have sex is not a good selling point.
No,
because it's
I'll
just
do it
like
even more.
It's just it's just like the parent telling the kid not to do anything. That just makes them want to do it.
Yeah,
more.
So
exactly.
instead of advocating
doing
truth,
that, teach them the word and teach them to get
right.
closer to God, and that changes their attitude and their relationship.
But
With that, it changes
I think we're
who they
focusing
are.
too much on just teenagers, whereas like you got people our age that are cohabitating with their significant other, for lack of a better term, and it's okay. The church doesn't address that.
Culture's accepted it.
Yeah,
Culture's
culture's
ignoring
accepted.
it.
Or
Exactly. I think it goes further than just telling teenagers not to have sex out of marriage when you're ignoring the couple that's there that's cohabitating and they've not.
let me tell you,
like when people just live together for years and they're like, oh, well, we've just done it, but we've just never been married, but we've been living.
Let me tell you,
I think I see more of that, and
that's true.
I think I see more of that than teenagers. I think we get so focused on what the teens are doing, because like the drug, sex, and alcohol kind of stuff, and rock and roll. Then you're not taking care of the people that are living down the street.
Let me tell you. Let me take that. Like, let me trump that one more. I had years ago, there was a little old lady in our church that was kind of in a nursing situation, nursing home facility. And dear saint, I got to be a little careful not to use a name or to give any more information, although none of you know her. I'll just say that. And nobody coming to Calvary 316 today probably knows her. So I'm just kind of framing it that way. But that was me telling Creighton, like, quit moving around over there.
You only made it more awkward by doing that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I do. Anyway, so she reached out to me and said, hey, Pastor, I need some counseling. I said, oh, this will be fun. This will be great. And so I was like, hey, let's meet at the church. My wife was going to be up there. Let's meet at the church, safe place. Would love to hear what's going on. So we met, we sat down, and the story I heard, like, just blew my mind. Like, Jessica afterwards was like, I know you can't divulge any specifics, but I laughed. I said, I felt like I was counseling a 12-year-old, like, with her love life, because it was like nursing home relationships and getting nookie from one, but he's getting nookie from another. And it's like, should I feel about that? And like, my whole deal was like, wait a second.
Wait.
You're not married.
You do know the statistics.
Oh,
of
this is crazy.
STDs in nursing homes.
But my point is, like, you bring up, like, okay, we're talking about like teenagers, like how we address the youth, and you bring it to like, well, what about like single adults, like in their 20s and 30s that are living together? What
about single
ladies in their 80s?
How about the single ladies in their 70s in these homes, and they're like, hey, I putting out, and it's like, wait a second, the Bible is still clear about sex, even as for a widow, like let's talk about what's going on here and the complicate, because I'll tell you this, it complicated life at that age in the same way it did for like a 16 or 17-year-old, because the Bible is saying something because of a deeper principle, and we should listen to it no matter what age it applies to, right?
Have you ever
know
heard
what
the
they
stats
say?
on the STDs in nursing homes?
Oh, they're bonkers.
wild.
Yeah.
It's
They're
rampant.
crazy.
Yep.
Dude, seniors will be seniors. You can't control them.
Seniors will be seniors. So, okay, so this is what I ran across. So this is an article in the Daily Mail. So this is the major UK publication. Secular, these are non-Christians. Here's the title of the headline. Abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. People who wait for sex until they are married are 3 times more likely to have higher stability in their relationships, study claims. I'm just going to read you some of the article here. You guys indulge me for a moment.
Remember Little Rant?
Say what? Okay, little rant, whatever. Sex before marriage is no longer taboo in America, but a new report suggests staying abstinent until your wedding ensures a happily ever after. Shocking, right? The Bible knows what he's talking. God knows what he's talking about. Researchers from and this is its own topic, but researchers from Brigham Young University
Bruh.
found that 45% of men and women who had only had sex with their spouse reported a quote very high level of relationship stability in their marriage, but just 25% of people with 5 to 9 sexual partners reported similar levels, and just 14% of those with 10 or more partners. The researchers suggest their findings might be due to the risk of comparing or previous sexual partners interfering with a marriage. However, Brigham Young University follows guidelines of the Church of the blah, 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 which preaches premarital sex. Continuing. Researchers noted the study was controlled for religiosity, which captured for each participant how frequently spirituality is an important part of life, how frequently prayer occurs, how important religious faith is. Quote, being highly religious is related to having both fewer sexual partners and longer relationships. We wanted to ensure that any difference we found based on sexual history was not simply related to how religious people were in the sample the study reads. So they did their best to try to remove religion out of the component. Okay, so that's the cliff notes to what that means. The report included surveys of 3,750 individuals in committed couple relationships who were asked to report relationship satisfaction on a scale from 1 to 5. The team found that in the U.S., the average number of sexual partners before marriage, this blew my mind. You have to take a guess. Average number of sexual partners before marriage is fill in the blank.
3.
7.
7.
My guess was 7
15.
715.
0 like me.
6.7.
Yes!
Kyle's the winner. Creighton's like,
Man.
what?
I have
Got it.
so much
That
work
point
to do
seven
if I
was a
want to get
midget.
married. Oh my goodness.
The average number of sexual partners before marriage is 6.7. And men and women reported, notice this, men and women reported almost identical numbers. So that is even genders the same. Quote, we found that for every additional sex, blows my mind. We found that for every additional sex partner reported, the probability of being in the highest category of relationship satisfaction decreased by almost 4%. So you guys catch that?
Mm-hmm.
For every additional sexual partner, long-term relational satisfaction drops 4 points. Relational stability showed an even larger chance and decreased by 6.5% for each additional sex partner, and sexual satisfaction decreased by 4% for each additional sex partner before marriage. So there's been this lie fed to our culture that, hey, you need to be experienced, right? Like you want to make sure that you satisfy your partner. That's been a lie. That's been something that has been sold by culture to a generation of people. Hey, you want to be experienced. You don't want to be a rookie. You want to know what you're doing. You want to make sure you satisfy her.
You don't want to
Or
make a
him.
fool out of yourself.
Right. Come to find out, the more experience you gain, the worse you are at it. The worse sexual satisfaction decreased by 4% for every additional sex partner before marriage. Questions include, how often have you thought about your relationship or marriage might be in trouble? How often have you or your partner discussed ending your relationship or marriage. How often have you broken up, separated, gotten back together? Responses range from 1, never, to very often 5. The inexperienced group, those who abstained from premarital sex, reported their marriage being very stable. 43%, 42% of women, only 40% of the less experienced group, those who had 2 to 4 sexual partners, reported similar levels of stability. The more experienced group, with 5 to 9 partners, was only about half as likely to report stability. Only 25% of the group's spouses reported that their marriages were very stable. The probability of those in a highly experienced group with 10 or more partners dropped even further. Only 14% of both men and women reported the highest levels of stability in their marriage. The study also assessed sexual satisfaction among participants using a similar questionnaire. Those in the inexperienced group, again, showed the greatest likelihood of reporting that they're very satisfied with all aspects of their sexual relationship, with more than 1 in 5 reporting high sexual satisfaction. Approximately 18% of women and 20% of men in the less experienced group reported similar levels. Only 1 in 10 in the more experienced group reported being sexually satisfied with their spouse. I'll read that again. Only 1 in 10 in the more experienced group reported being sexually satisfied with their spouse. 11% of women, 12% of men, and just 1 in 14 respondents of highly experienced spouses, 7% of women, 7% of men, reported that they're highly satisfied with their sex life in marriage. I could go on with the article, but I think you get the gist of it. God knows what he's talking about.
Surprisingly. Like, of course, I mean, I don't think that this is
But this is being
groundbreaking at
confirmed
all.
by a secular study.
Right, which is, I mean, I've been hearing this for years from people who I know who are, older brothers in Christ who are like, yeah, you should wait because I didn't, and boy, would I wish I had. I've been hearing that since I was in middle school. This is not new. It's very interesting, though, that the secular world is finding it, and I wonder what's going to happen.
I've never met
It's
someone,
wild.
and you guys can be a test. I've never met someone, 2 people, right, that were like, we're going to abstain from having sex till we're married, that regretted it. I have never run into one person that was like, man, I totally regret being abstinent.
Agreed.
Never met that person. In fact, it's the opposite, where multiple, and again, the study proves it, multiple partners, it brings in all kinds of complications. Again, and it reveals the great lie, because we have kids being told like sex is it's selfish in how it's presented. It's again, there's so many lies.
I'll take
Jump in there. I mean,
I'll take what you said a step further, because like, I agree. I've never heard anybody that has waited for marriage, whether it's the couple or just one of them. Like if one of them had sex before they got together and then the 2 of them didn't moving forward. I've never heard anybody in that category say they wish they had had sex before marriage. I have heard, I would say 99% of people say they wish they hadn't had sex before marriage once they're in a committed Christian relationship. Like, I know very few people who are in like committed Christian relationships who are like, yeah, that time in college, totally worth it. Do it again if I had the opportunity.
right.
I don't know anybody who's like, yeah, other than locker room joking, be like, yeah, I wish I could go back to when I was 20 so I could, bang a bunch of girls in college and then, still meet my wife and go on to the life
And
we
be
have now.
Intimate with her.
Right. Nobody's like, I wish my body count was 30 more people now in my life.
Kyle, just as a youth pastor, if you have someone that comes and approaches you, a teen, like what is the logic? Like, what do you present to them of like, hey, this is what God says. This is why he says it. Like speak to the audience. Like, why shouldn't you? What are the biblical reasons? Like, what's the approach? Like, aside from the science and what we just talked about.
Yeah, well, I think first of all, like with this whole conversation, you even said something like, well, surprise, God knows what he's talking about. And like, that's the mindset, is that it's a competition between what God says. God says that if you wait, it's going to be better. and the world says, no, do it more so that way you kind of try things out or you get better at it and it's going to be better. That mindset's wrong completely, even with the way that you said it, because it's not like God's not saying that it'll be better that way. It has a purpose. Like there's an actual function to it. It's not just a thing that is pleasure. Sex isn't just pleasure. It's a thing that it has a purpose.
Articulate that. What is the purpose?
It's for your spouse. It's something that it's a development of your relationship with your wife.
We would say an expression of oneness.
Yeah, it's a becoming one together, right? And it does something more than just a physical feeling and a chemical reaction in the brain. It's two souls becoming one and completing each other. I mean, it's an act of that.
It's an expression. I had a counseling appointment, a premarital counseling appointment recently, and I was talking about sex, and it was like, sex, the way you approach sex, is a great illustration of how marriage is successful. Like, what's the biggest detriment to a marriage? Well, it's selfishness on either person. Like, marriage requires the denial of self over the preference of the other individual. It's selfless. And the beautiful, like, marriages work when the husband is loving his wife as Christ loves the church, that his focus is on her needs and her focus is on his needs. Like, if I'm selfless in marriage and I'm focused on her, and she's selfless and she's focused on me, that becomes one. And the great expression of that is how sex works. And I brought this up in the counseling appointment. Like the worst sex you can have is one that's selfishly motivated. If the dude goes into sex and his perspective is completely what he's going to get. I want pleasure. I want to get off. I want my fantasy fulfilled. And he goes in with that mindset. It's about him. Guess what happens? He goes in about 2 minutes and she's unsatisfied. So she's completely left out of it because it takes not a lot of time for a guy to get off. And as my wife has expressed to me multiple times, women are pressure cookers. Take some time. But if a man goes into sex selfish, then it's a terrible experience. And again, the guy gets off, he's asleep, and the woman's like, well, what was that? Like, that wasn't fun. That wasn't enjoyable. If the woman goes in selfishly motivated, again, the guy finds himself incredibly frustrated, and it's difficult. And it's like a whole lot of foreplay without any climax. It's like, where are we going with this? Like what makes sex beautiful? Like, what makes it perfect? What makes it perfect is when a man goes into it with one goal. I'm going to make sure that she's taken care of. Like, that's my goal. That's I don't care about myself. My job is to please her and take care of her. And she goes into the bed with the same intention. You know what? I don't care about me. My goal is to take care of him. So you have him focus on her and you have her focus on him, and you go into it, and you know what you find out? That's the best sex. For anybody that's married that's had sex, that's the best sex. It's beautiful, it's organic, it's selfless, it's pleasurable. It's how God intended it, and it is the expression of marital oneness that manifests in all different varieties of life, because that's how a marriage is beautiful. When the man is just preferring his wife and his wife is preferring the man, and you're like, I'm in it for you and she's in it for you, like you're together. And sex is the expression of that. But we've dumbed that down in society. How? We've framed it as a tool for personal gratification.
Or a thing that you get out of a relationship.
Or a thing that you get. I did it all for the nookie. So you can take my cookie, to quote the great lyricist Fred Durst, right? But you're right. It's what I get out of I get it. It's something I'm receiving from it. No, sex is something that you're giving into it, which requires, by the way, incredible vulnerability, selflessness, openness, which only really works within a covenant, an agreement. again, God says, hey, God created sex for procreation, yes, but also for enjoyment as the expression of marital oneness. It's the entire blueprint for sex. Sex is not just about procreation, although that's an important function. If you're having a lot of sex and you have no intention of procreating, that's not according to God's design. I know that's a controversial statement in today's culture, but God wanted sex. Why? Because we do this whole illustration of oneness, right? And what's produced? Someone that is both me and her. It's half me and it's half her. It is one. It's the actual. There's so much imagery.
It's literally two becoming one.
It's two becoming one. And that's why God, he instituted sex. It was the expression of oneness. It was designed for procreation, and it yields enjoyment. Like that was God's blueprint. He told Adam and Eve, multiply and fill the earth. We have a lot of the exercising of the enjoyment without the multiplication in our society. And that's another topic for another day. Why we see child rates just imploding. Not just in the world, which we do. Elon Musk talks about that, which is interesting. But within Christian culture. You know, the one religion that's procreating more than anyone else? Muslims and Mormons.
Well, Mormons.
But there's an identification of like, you know, the greatest form of evangelism is making another Christian. Like, it's a hard one. I love that our church, you know, hey, go tell someone about Jesus or make a Christian. Either one, we're good with.
We have a lot of babies.
We have a lot of babies right now. We have a lot of babies. But like, there's this, like what you were saying, Kyle, there's a blueprint to it and there's a reason for it. And when we break from that, we diminish what's significant. Now, I should add, and this is important. Let's say you have had sex outside of marriage. I was talking to a couple the other day, getting married, been sleeping together. And they're like, well, I mean, but we're getting married. Like we plan to be together forever. So why not start now? Hey, as like Jessica and I face that, like, hey, like we're going to get married in like 3 weeks. Why not crash out together? Right. You guys, everybody's, you know, we've all been there, right? Let's be real. Put the camera on other people so they can nod.
Yeah.
Put the not on you.
I have never
not on
had
you.
to
You
deal
have
with
no
that ever in my life. Never had to do it. Never been there. Not at all.
Never been
I have
there.
no idea
One
what you're
thing
talking
I
about.
really enjoyed this conversation on how we got the Bible tonight.
Yes. Yeah. No. Well, we've got about 95 seconds.
Yeah,
left.
seriously.
Yeah,
So we can get to that topic if you like, Justin.
Nah.
I mean, I have no input I can give on
Next
this.
week.
Right. I have a little bit.
Hey, you got something you can learn.
Well, hey, listen, I'll tell you this. I have so much admiration and respect to the two virgins in the room, Justin and Creighton, guys that love Jesus. Hey, just being real.
This makes that
Hold on. I want to be very clear. You shouldn't, like, that's like saying, oh, I'm so glad you've never done crack.
Okay,
I've never
knows you're not
seen
married.
crack. I wouldn't be able to do crack if it was like, I don't know what I would do with it if it was given to me. What do you mean? Like, yeah, I've never done crack. What do you mean? You have admiration for me. It's not like I'm beating off crack dealers with a bat. My goodness.
It's pretty awesome.
Gosh. And thanks for that. I'm trying to give you a compliment.
I know.
I'm trying to give you a compliment. You took
it.
it beating off crack dealers. hey, to remain pure in this particular culture and to continue to hold on to something that is important, saying, Lord, I want to give this to a future spouse if you will it. I think that's commendable. I really do. And I think that's worth noting. And if there's any single ladies in the audience, these are two good dudes. These are the type of guys you're looking for. You don't want to be looking for the guy that's, quote, experienced, because again, according to secular research, that doesn't work well.
Mm-hmm.
You want the guy that's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I hope you don't either. And we can have fun figuring it out. Like, that's kind of the beauty of it. But to say, and again, back to my point, is that if you are in a situation where it's like, well, gosh, I don't want to be the statistic, but yeah, I've had sex before. And now what? There was back in the Promise Keepers movement, there was the whole like, you can pledge yourself and you're now like
Spiritual virgin.
a spiritual virgin. No, you're not. That's not a thing. Like, to be a virgin is an actual thing. But can you make a decision to follow Jesus and to do things his way, and the Lord provide restoration and renewal? Again, I know a lot of Christian men that slept around, got convicted about it, said, you know what, enough's enough. Lord brought the right woman, and they were like, this is, Lord, you gotta heal some things, and you gotta renew it. And I don't want to bring in any baggage to this. And God meets you, and his grace is sufficient, and it can be a beautiful thing. Again, I'm not putting anyone on the spot, but I think we can all testify again culturally to amen and amen. You know,
Yep.
like God is faithful to that. Forget about the stupid, spiritual virgin, whatever. Like he's into renewal, right? He's into restoration. He's into making things that were broken new, and giving second, third, fourth chances, right? I just thought that was an interesting study. I know, again, my bad. It was a rant.
It was a good episode still.
It took over the episode. So, again, we're not actually meeting next week, programming note. We've got some church stuff going on the 10th of May. We've got our kids' night out at the church, youth ministry and whatnot. But we'll be back the week after the 17th. And then we'll be, we have no interruptions really all the way up through, I want to say up through the end of June. And then we'll be approaching the summer with some prudence. So, you guys, any final thoughts?
I'm good.
Anything you want to make a plug, Cray? Get fed today, baby.
Yeah. So I live in Winder. I am 30.
My Tinder profile is Pope Creighton.
Yeah. We have. If you have any questions that you would like answered on the show,
FarmersOnly.com.
@gmail.com.
Farmers Only.
If you would like to get a Bible study on a daily basis, we upload, a podcast called Get Fed Today uploads 5 podcasts on Sunday nights.
5 audio studies, not 5 podcasts.
Yeah, whatever. 5 audio studies. If you listen on Spotify, it may have problems because Spotify is...
We were working on figuring out.
Spotify is
some
having
glitches.
issues. I have tickets in. I'm working on it. But yeah,
mean
Get
they're
Fed
working on
Today,
it?
PopeCreighton
Right.
@gmail.com.
I'll add to that if at any point, so we actually had a friend of ours who uses so I don't use Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Creighton, you use Google, I use Apple. We're not on Spotify, although the podcast is on Spotify. If you ever, whatever platform you use, if you ever run into an issue with Get Fed Today or Outlaw Radio or Calvary 316, any of the podcasts, you run into an issue, just drop us a note at popecreighton@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And that's the best way for us to know that the issue exists and to try to address it and to deal with it. So that, kind of important programming tidbit there. You guys, Kyle, you got anything? Spice Daddy?
I'm good.
Anything you want to add? Deal Daddy?
No, sir.
Mr. Monty?
I'm good.
Good. Creighton, what do you think? You good?
Good to go. Let's
All
roll.
right. Well, let me roll some music. Well, you've been listening to the Outlaw Radio Show. Again, my name's Zach Adams. So glad that you joined us. You can learn all about the show. You can find the links to everything we've been referencing by just going to outlawradio.org. That's our website, outlawradio.org. If you're watching the live stream, fantastic. Check out the podcast. Releases on Thursday. It's available on Apple, Google, Spotify. If you're listening right now, join us Wednesday night, 8 p.m. What you're listening to, we actually live stream the recording of it. It's a lot of fun. You can interact with us in real time. Great opportunity again, Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Next Wednesday, we're not live streaming, so we'll be taking a week off. But again, podcast, live stream. We're so glad that you were with us. Join us this time in 2 weeks. God bless.